Enzorecto, kalaban ang katiwalian at kasinungalingan, kakampi sa katotohanan at kabutihan.
All right. Now let's get straight to the point. You're being accused of gathering dirt. That was what was written in the article by Rigoberto Tiglao. He says that you are, being one of the highest paid attorneys in the country, you are gathering evidence, and he claims even concocted testimonies, mere media reports, dirt against President Duterte and others. Let's start with that.
Absolutely false, Karen. I am not gathering dirt specifically against President Duterte. I was asked by the victims to figure out what happened to the killings and how to connect the killings to the statements of President Duterte. What I will admit is, when we first submitted a communication to the International Criminal Court, this was in August 2018, we submitted transcripts of the statements of the president with regard to the war on drugs. This is publicly available. And I mean, if there is dirt at all, it comes from Duterte's side. What we just did was put together all this information and make it available to the office of the prosecutor. As to the paid part, I think they're just reading too many novels and probably browsing through the ICC materials. In the article, he actually, this former journalist says that I get some kind of remuneration from the ICC. Unfortunately, there's a lot of assumptions. It assumes that, one, there is a case already. Second, I have been appointed to the court. And third, that the remunerations, the amount indicated, have already been approved or released by the court. None of that has happened yet. And right now, I am engaged pro bono by the victims here on the ground, both for domestic and international engagements.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So perhaps you can describe your mandate, being the ICC Assistant to Counsel. What exactly does that title mean?
Yes, I realize it must be misleading for some. For others, it feels as if I am assisting the ICC or a counsel in the ICC. But what it really means is that I am registered before the list of assistants to counsels. I am there, and I am among so many assistants to counsel. There are a few other counsels, the counsels who can represent parties before the court. Karen, ang itsura niyan parang sa Pilipinas, you are accredited, you are registered to practice before the court. In the Philippines, if you can pass the bar or if you are accredited. In the ICC, it's similar as well. Not any lawyer can practice before the court. You have to be registered. If a case opens and I am appointed, engaged, and this is approved by the court, then I can assist in a case. So right now, I am one counsel who can appear before the ICC.
Okay.
I am pledged for the victims of the war on drugs, just to be clear. Kaya, for example, if Duterte becomes an accused before the ICC, he can very well form a team among the people listed in the councils. If he asks me, I would have to reject the offer because I am already pledged in the particular situation in the Philippines to the victims.
Okay, so it seems there's a misunderstanding of your role, right? So number one, what's clear right now that you're explaining is, one, you're not employed by the ICC, you're not getting funding from the ICC, and you are essentially registered to be a lawyer that can actually practice, in effect, if this goes to trial in front of the ICC. So that's one, rehistrado ka sa ICC. Pero hindi ka bayaran ng ICC, hindi ka empleyado ng ICC, hindi ka nila tao. But you are a lawyer for the victims of the drug war, which wouldn't it be logical that instead of the word dirt against Duterte, you are gathering evidence against Duterte? Is that fair?
That's fair, but again, it's not exactly against Duterte. We're not looking at him from the very beginning as, you know, we just have to pin him down. We started from the bottom. Sa killings kami nagsimula. We started from documenting these killings and then putting together public statements, putting together policy pronouncements. Kinonect na lang namin. In fact, our victims voted for Duterte. Some of them are Duterte supporters.
Mhm.
And when we talk to them, they would say na maybe there was just something wrong, maybe there was miscommunication on the ground, maybe it was our fault. But then when you process the information, when you analyze everything, our resolution, our conclusion then was it was Duterte's fault. And in crimes against humanity, you don't really look at the person who
What led you to that conclusion? You said in our conclusion, it was Duterte's fault. So based on your conversation with the victims, the families, the stakeholders, what led you to the conclusion that it leads up to the top?
his statements, Karen, even before he was elected, that there will be killings, there will be blood, resulted in killings and in blood. And when we traced the processes or the modus operandi, it appeared to us, and this is important to point out, that Duterte appointees or Davao police officers were the ones who were leading the police in the areas where the killings were heightened. And this would be Caloocan in the very beginning, later on Bulacan, and later on Cebu. There were Davao boys, so to speak, who were presiding or lording it over these areas. And so the concept of death squads deployed from Davao or deployed by Duterte and Bato de la Rosa became clearer to us as the killings went on.
Okay, so it's not just a rhetoric, because when you speak with former cabinet members of former President Duterte, they would say that's a rhetoric. He never actually issued an executive order na patayin ganito, right? So wala daw EJK. They always excuse it and say that it's how he speaks. They claim it was not literal.
I wish I could support that, but I mean, it's not just those kinds of statements. It was also, I will protect you. Ako ang bahala sa inyo kahit anong mangyari. Kung nanlaban, patayin mo. Kung walang baril, bigyan mo. And so the entirety of the statements, I mean, it would be difficult to backtrack, to say that it was just hyperbole or it was just a challenge. Really right now, before the ICC, are many cases against top officials, even presidents, who have made similar statements. And it is for their appreciation how these statements can be made. And we are confident that it's not just Duterte statements, but possibly some actions, some hidden statements, or some secret missives or directives he has made.
Okay. Now, recently in an interview, you said, and you can correct this, you said you were pretty sure. Did you use those words? You were pretty sure that former President Duterte, and this is in quote, will be considered as one of the most responsible for the war on drugs during his administration. When you say pretty sure, do you believe an arrest warrant will be issued against him? What is the state of the investigation today?
Well, right now the investigation is at that point where it is determining who is most responsible. That's the question that has to be established. We've already established during the preliminary examination that crimes against humanity occur in the Philippines. The Philippine government said, oh, maybe you forgo the investigation, defer it, because we will investigate. Later on, the ICC says, what kind of investigation are you doing? You're doing 52 cases? We step in again. And so it started technically in September 2021, reapproved again in January 2023. And it's been too long. So I think at this point, they have their finger on things already. And the name of President Duterte has been there in the OTP, in the Office of the Prosecutor documents, since June 2021. He's been named as someone who was enabled, at the least, tolerated, or even ordered or encouraged these killings. And so it's not just me who's saying that President Duterte will likely be looked into. At the minimum, there would be someone's issue. Someone's meaning, please come and cooperate with the court. But at the maximum, I think really, there would be a warrant of arrest. And President Duterte's...
And when do you believe will the warrant of arrest be issued?
That's the thing. Actually, the process right now is confidential. The investigation itself is confidential unless you are the one who's being talked to. So that's why I think some of these officials might have the audacity to talk about, to confirm things from the ICC. But then,
Okay.
even the application for a warrant of arrest is under seal. It's confidential. And as I have discussed in some other interviews, no news is good news in a sense with regard to warrants of arrest. Because if they announce the warrant of arrest, it says that maybe there's no chance that this warrant will be served, as in the case of President
So
Putin.
are you saying that it's possible that there's a warrant that will be issued, but they won't announce it, and then you can have members of the ICC in the country and just arrest him?
So one, it's not just possible, it is the rule that a warrant of arrest is issued confidentially, secret warrant of arrest. It's only announced in certain instances when the court approves it, as in the case of President Putin, when there was no chance of him being arrested. So a secret, quote-unquote, warrant of arrest has to be coerced to members of the ICC. And this is where it could become public. So if the members of the court receive this warrant of arrest, if the Interpol, with whom the ICC has a cooperation agreement, receives a warrant of arrest and issues a red notice, then perhaps it becomes public. But from my understanding, the ICC, as much as possible, reaches out to the country where the accused is at, and asks the police, the local police, to execute the warrant. It will not be ICC officials executing the warrant. The ICC has no police. It depends on the police forces of its member organizations.
Okay, so just an update on the ICC. You can correct me on this. As of the one I have here is as of June 2018, it has issued public arrest warrants for 42 individuals, right? I'm sure, is that still the number? Thereabouts?
I think so, thereabouts. Because there were two warrants issued 2 months ago, I think, against two Russian officials.
Now 6 of the individuals are already in custody of the court. So
Yes.
of those issued, you have 6 that's actually been arrested and they're in The Hague right now. So just very quickly, can you give me an instance of at least one of those who were successfully arrested? Were they arrested in their own countries? Or were they traveling and there was no more jurisdiction of the country and that's when they were arrested?
Those two instances that you mentioned, that has happened. And this is not only in the case of the ICC, in other international tribunals or courts. There was one who was arrested in another country. He was president of his own country, traveled to another country.
What was that? Was he vacationing?
I think he sought asylum.
All right. Okay. So he sought asylum, and despite seeking asylum, he was arrested in that country where he was granted asylum.
Yes, because things can change. In another African situation, the elections turned the other way. And so this accused was not protected anymore by the ruling party. And as such, he was surrendered actually by the country. I'm just not sure about his name, but this was in Sudan, if I recall.
Okay. So what happens, Attorney, I don't mean to cut you, but we don't have enough time. What happens now? President Marcos Jr. has repeatedly said that we're no longer a member of the ICC. Do they still have jurisdiction, even if we're not a member, to arrest who they believe to be a suspect, a leader they suspect of being guilty, even if the country's not a member? Can they still do that?
As to investigation, the ICC has jurisdiction over the situation. But as to arrest, it will really have to be the local police to execute that warrant of arrest.
If you're no longer a member.
If you're no longer a member. But that's a question actually that's interesting.
That's very good that we're discussing the process. Kasi this is where it gets very confusing. So if you are no longer a member, which we are not, the Philippines is not, if the ICC issues a warrant, it's the local police who has to implement the warrant. And for them to implement the warrant, is it right to say the president has to order the police to cooperate and implement the warrant? If President Marcos Jr. refuses, then stalemate. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, essentially that's it. Unless, and this is an option, we can move to confirmation of charges. If a counsel comes in and represents these accused, instead of the accused being in custody, they would voluntarily submit in one sense and question maybe jurisdictional issues before the court. That's one option. And I've heard about a few of them engaging the services of counsel who is ICC accredited. As to this arrest, we've always maintained that, yes, it is a matter of political will, but we appeal on the basis of continuing cooperation that is required under Article 127 of the Rome Statute. Under the agreement that we signed before, it says that even after you have exited, even after you have withdrawn from the ICC, you have continuing obligations. And if the president reads the briefer, a fair and thorough briefer supplied by the DOJ, then I would suppose he would come to the conclusion that yes, we still have that obligation. This is interesting because the Philippines is only, again, I think the second country to have withdrawn from the ICC. So this is actually new territory for even the court itself. What are the obligations of withdrawn countries?
Yeah, but then why should, the problem with the situation is the United States, one of the founding members of the ICC, I believe they're not even a member, right?
Yes, they were engaged initially.
Exactly.
But then they moved out when the crimes against aggression was put into the charter.
Oh, okay. So, but just to move on, just my last question is, there in another article at the Manila Times, it said that this was a May 13 article. It says that former President Duterte is actually not named in any of the ICC investigation documents. And I think it's important to say right now, just factually speaking, that this is false, right?
Yes.
He is named, specifically named. So this isn't an idea of posibleng si Duterte. No, he is in the ICC documents.
Yes, Karen, he is in the ICC documents from the report of the Office of the Prosecutor on the preliminary examination. In the request for investigation, he's been named. And it's inescapable that he will have to be in these documents because the materials that are available to the court, especially those which are reliable information, that's how they start. They start from reliable information. So really, the article mixes some true things, but some false things.
So that's the fact. So former President Duterte is named in the ICC documents. Is Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa named?
Yes, as well as Albayalde. This is in one of the reports of the Office of the Prosecutor because they mentioned that they were the chiefs of police. I think the period covered covers also their terms. So we left the ICC March 2019. I think Albayalde was the chief of.
Okay. So just for the record, there are 3 names officially mentioned in the documents: Duterte, De La Rosa, and Albayalde. Is that correct?
Yes, and the ICC wants to look more into more mid-level police officers, and they've identified directors of the PIDEA, probably the drug agencies.
Okay, and you haven't seen these? You haven't seen those documents, those names?
Well, the names are in the report of the OTP, which is publicly available, but the actual, like the investigation documents, those are under seal as yet. We expect these to be unsealed or to be submitted before the court sooner rather than later, hopefully within the year.
All right. On that note, I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for, actually explaining how the process will go if it does go in the next few months. Thank you so much, ICC Assistant to Counsel, Attorney Cristina Conti. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Karen.
May hulanong salita na ang ibig sabihin dito ay ang pagkakain isa.
Bunyog Party List.
Halika na, Bunyog Party List ka na. Halika na, Bunyog Party List ka na.
Sa susunod, ang atinang suportahan, Bunyog Party List, nagtataguyod ng katotohanan, lumalaban para sa bayan.